Hello, hello. Welcome again to the All In podcast with Nate Pale. Of course, I'm your host, Nate Pale. My guest today is Cody McAuliffe with the Flow Formula. Cody is a speaker who specializes in taking leaders and teams from force to flow. He does this by using the Flow Formula, a modality he created, which is based on testing people's epigenetic expression. This means that leaders can understand how their brains work differently to other humans ultimately to get in flow and become superhuman. Welcome to the show, Cody. How are you doing?
Amazing, Nate. Thanks for having me. How are you doing
Well,
today?
thanks for coming on. I'm doing great. Interesting bio there where you just jump right into force to flow. Now, can you explain to the audience at home, what does flow really mean? And then how did you discover that flow is where you wanted to put your passions and your effort into growing a business?
Yeah, 100%. Great question. And I think everything changed for me. And I had this epiphany in my life where I was driving down the highway, which is just down the road on the Gold Coast where I live. And I was driving down the highway and I had this experience where I had tears streaming down my face. And I pulled up at this traffic light and I had the thought, if I just drive out into traffic, then like a truck will take me out, my life will be over, but it won't look like a suicide. And that was a life-changing moment for me because what I realized in that instance was I just wasn't fulfilled. I had all of the trappings of success. I was presenting all around the country. I was making more money than I ever had. But what I realized was I was just forcing everything in my life. And that was a turning point for me to start to create this shift and go, okay, cool, what is actually missing? How do I actually create this life of deep fulfillment for me so that I can actually continue to live my life? And that was really that tipping point of just starting to realize in hindsight, okay, well, I was forcing everything, and there's this other thing out there in the world where we can actually create flow and fulfillment. And how we define flow is really just this heightened state of consciousness where we can get more done in less time, where we have a deeper sense of fulfillment, where we have this complete clarity. And it's almost like this state that most people live their entire life kind of chasing to be able to try and get to that point. And what I realized as part of this journey was, well, there was a proven predictable process to be able to create that for people. And as soon as you knew that, it was quite easy to be able to do so. And that was the really my journey from understanding that I was actually forcing things. And I really didn't even know that at that time. Like most people are just like, oh, I'm just doing whatever I need to do to be able to get things done. And it's only in hindsight that we can reflect and go, okay, that was probably not the best pathway to take. Let's start to readjust. And that hindsight of starting to see how much I was actually forcing things and how much I was actually drained really started to create that massive shift for me, and then started to move more into that place beyond that. So yeah.
Yeah, when you talk about forcing, I feel like that has been a subject on my mind a lot lately, which I describe it a lot differently. I call it square peg, round hole, where I'm like trying to pound something and it is just not fitting. And we keep pushing it, try a different way, maybe faster, maybe slower. And I felt like that with my life a bit, where I'm chasing after things and I'm trying to make them work. And we have this idea that if we're hustling and grinding and things are difficult, we're going to emerge on the other side victorious and champions. And that's the life of an entrepreneur. But that's not necessarily the case. Like a lot of my successes I've had in life came easily. They came through, they just felt right. I guess to describe it as flow, not to reuse your word so much to use the word to describe the word we're trying to describe, but it just felt like it eased into it. And so I've been trying to like take a step back and look at the things that aren't making sense, and why does it feel like it's such a fight and a struggle, and take those things off and start working on those things that feel natural, that feel in alignment of who I am as a person. And then those things tend to smoothly go into it. So you talked about people can find a flow state. Like, what is your advice for getting out of that force mentality? One, how do you identify you're forcing it versus you're just, pushing past the adversity, but really it needs to be stopped and you need to take a step back. And then how do you find that flow state?
Yeah, 100%. Great question as part of it. And One of the things that we look at is we live our entire life in this little box of what is normal, and we try and fit into this box of what normal is, and yet every single person is this unique, innate individual. And part of what I'm looking at creating is what I call this superhuman society, where everyone lives from their unique, innate gifts, so they can have their foundational needs met and come from their higher needs of growth and contribution. And what that creates is this deep sense of flow and fulfillment for every single person, so they can actually access that in their life. So how we actually start to begin to create that flow is actually just meeting those foundational needs based on a biological level, based on a psychological level. So we can actually start to create an environment conducive with that. And what we start to notice when people are forcing is they're just working against what they're actually set up for. And when we're working with people, we test the epigenetic expression to understand how their brain works. And our epigenetic expression is basically just how your genes are expressing themselves right now. When we can understand that, we can determine,
How do
okay,
you
cool, this is
test
how.
that?
So the process of testing that is normally about 45 minutes to be able to measure people's physical skeleton, because if you've got, an example is if your ring finger is longer than your index finger, then you have more testosterone in your body. And everyone always checks their hands straight away. And that means that you're better at sales in that instance, because you've got a certain predominance of hormones, and there's heaps of these different components that play out in your body. So it takes about 45 minutes to be able to get all of that information, put it into an AI system, and then it spits out the outputs of going, okay, your brain functions like this. This is how you get flow. This is the time frame that you can get into flow compared to this other person over here who can get into flow for a longer period of time, but it's harder for them to be able to get into it. And we can get all of this information to have this proven predictable system to go, this is how you get flow right now. Because in most instances when people are talking about flow, it's like, right, this generalization of things without the personalization, which really creates access to how we can get it specifically for us. And when we, as soon as we learn that, it just becomes this easy process to access that.
So is that something, and I get that like there everybody's unique and you're learning how to access that uniquely you. So this is something that every single person can take advantage of. They just need to figure out what works for them. So how do you actually really know that you're in flow and not just in a peaceful state of mind? Like where does flow like really feel like? And how can that be replicated?
Yeah, 100%. So to define flow and how I define it in my book is that there's really three characteristics of what it's not and one characteristic of what it is. And the reason why we define it by what it's not is because that creates a border, because it's so individualized to how someone will experience that. We really create the border of that. So the three characteristics.
There you are.
All right, my back.
I
So defining
lost you
flow.
at the three characteristics of what is not.
Yeah. So we've got three characteristics of what it's not. So what we look at within that is its selflessness, which is outside the construct of our internal dialogue. We've got effortlessness. When the effort becomes effortless, you're in flow. And timelessness, when you lose your construct of time. So it can either speed up or it can slow down. So they're the three boundaries of that which is it is not. And then we also have in the middle this richness of experience, where the purpose of the activity becomes this activity, where it becomes this perpetuating experience, and you lose that space of self, time, effort, and become this richness of experience, as if you're eating like this most delicate, delicious chocolate cake that you just automatically start taking the next bite because it's so enlivening and enriching for you. That's what we look at as a state of flow. Most people see flow as this productive state, which is one aspect of it. And at the same time, it creates this deep sense of aliveness and presence to the thing that we're actually doing, that we actually become one with the activity that we're doing. It's like if a world-class, like the Australian Open is just starting over here in Australia, and if a world-class tennis player is actually playing tennis, the racket becomes an extension of their body, because they become at one with the experience, and they become ingrained into the experience of being one with the tennis ball and with that, and then it just becomes this flow-based experience. They're not necessarily thinking about what they're doing, they're one with what they're doing, and it becomes this creative process for creation's sake in that context. So that's why we talk about as a heightened state of consciousness where we can get more done, and it's really this sense of aliveness that we start to look at getting in everyday life.
I think, looking back after you're describing it, I mean, there's things in my life where I guess you would say that they were in flow, and they stand out as really unique memories too. They're very strong and vivid memories. And it's not just like the experience of like this event happened, but it's almost like I remember what my body felt like, my
Mm,
mind felt like, and what things smelled like. It was like, it's usually around like a sporting event where things just kind of clicked, and like you moved, you could almost like watch yourself moving because you were so like in tune with what you're doing. But it was like the little things of like, okay, if I want this to do this, my body's got to be in this one position, it's got to be balanced, boom, and you're able to accomplish it. But I've had the flip side where I haven't been in flow, and those ideas and those mental like images of completing the task or completing the objective, I couldn't get my mind to grasp like how my body should feel. And so like I would be like, okay, well, I'm off balance in my mind before I approach it. Then I'm off balance in my mind when I attempt it. And so it's unsuccessful. And I think those events, when you're so in flow, they register on more of an emotional level than just a visual, physical level, that they stick with you. And um, I didn't really realize that you could replicate that. I just like thought like, hey, sometimes you're having a good day, an on day, some days you're having an off day. But if you're able to control that and harness that, what is that level of potential you could do day in and day out? Are you able to sustain that? Is it, or that consistency of being in flow, or does it become the new normal, and then you're just kind of at another benchmark, you've reached another plateau? How do you elevate past that? What is it like when you're in flow on a consistent, regular basis?
yeah, it's a great question. It's one of the things that I cover in my book as well. We start to look at creating this new superhuman society, which eventually becomes the normal for every single person, and that's what we're really having the potential to step into right now. Because what's occurring is there's so many jobs which are completely meaningless, which are being outsourced to technology and taken over. That means that only creativity can be the thing that becomes left. Only the things that humans can do that are tapping into the high level of consciousness to actually be able to create for creation's sake. And this artistic creation will solve a lot of the world's problems as part of that. And that becomes the new norm. And that's what I'm committed to creating as part of the superhuman society. And that's a long process to be able to create that on a societal level. And part of that is just starting to be able to create more flow for more people more often. Because most people, as you've experienced, you've had experiences like that. And what if we can create that on a daily basis? And what if we can create that multiple times per day? Because again, people have different flow cycles that they'll go through. We're not always in flow. We go into flow and then we come out into the different phases that we need to go through. There are really 4 phases that we go through as part of that to actually go into flow and then out of it so that we can actually get back into it. And part of the good aspect about learning about flow is really starting to learn how many cycles that you can actually get into in a day. Because if you just get into a short period of flow once during the day, that's awesome. And at the same time, what if you could actually get into back-to-back flow states throughout the day as well, which is ultimately what it's all about. And one of the core things that we look at for that is also the timing of things, because our body has certain rhythms and certain cycles. And when we can start to learn what those are, we can make sure that we're actually doing the right thing at the right time. Because unknowingly, for most people, they're doing the right thing at the wrong time, because our body's not actually set up for that. When we work with our body instead of against it, then that creates flow. If we're working against it, that creates more force. And in most instances, people are completely oblivious to the fact that they're forcing until they learn these things.
So is this something that you can learn quickly, or does it take like months and months of practice to discover it, and then a lifelong journey of mastering it?
Yeah, just like anything, there's going to be going through the 4 different stages of learning, of being unconsciously incompetent and then going into consciously incompetent. It's going through then conscious competence and then unconscious competence again. It's going to be these different phases that we go through for part of it. So depending on the depth of mastery that you want to get to, you can pick up things straight away to start to go, okay, cool. I'm noticing now where I'm forcing and where I'm flowing. This is going to be the first stage of learning that we go through, and then consciously starting to change my choices to be able to get more flow as part of that. And then eventually it just becomes automatic as part of it. Like my day is just set up in a way where I can get the maximum amount of flow as part of it. So like right now where I am, it's in the morning and I have my highest level of thinking time right now. I can creatively solve problems. I can communicate more effectively. I can sell better in the afternoons because of the levels of testosterone that I have in my body. So I just have my day set up to be conducive for creating this environment for me getting the maximum amount of flow possible, so that way I can really just start to create what I'm here to create in this lifetime, which is ultimately what it's all about.
That's very cool. So what does a typical day look like for you then?
A typical day will look like, it depends on the week. So a lot of the time I'll be doing a lot of my own personal development and things like that. So that those weeks will change. Today it's me getting up and actually just starting to map out some intellectual property this morning before this, for programs and things that I run, to be able to do that, because it's the highest level, my highest quality task for me. It's something that I really can't outsource, but a lot of the other things I can outsource to the team. Then going through any kind of speaking engagements that I have like this, and then coaching through the middle of the day and sales calls through the middle of the day, and then kind of wrapping up in the afternoon, when is the best time for me to actually train, because my heart is strongest between 5 and 6 p.m. So that's the best time for me to train, based on my epigenetic expression. So that's kind of what a typical day looks like for me, finishing off the day with some reading and meditation and things, just to be able to drop my central nervous system back down so I can actually get into much more flow again the next day.
Very cool. So this is kind of a combination of physical, psychology, law of attraction, energy. Like it's not just like one thing, but it's kind of taking all those components. A lot of people focus innately on one thing, but taking them all and going, hey, how can we optimize this? And you do describe like, hey, if you could be at that level of consistency, you would become a superhuman. But I mean, when you go out there and you're talking about what you're doing, what's the reaction? Do people think you're crazy? Do they like think, wow, this can't be right, this is just mental gymnastics? But like really, like what's your reaction, and how do you start showcasing to people like, hey, this is a real deal thing and I can prove it works to you?
Yeah, 100%. And that's one of the things. Like when I first started out, people were like, I don't know if this is really a thing. But now that they start to actually feel the certainty that I have, and I've seen so many results of different people from federal members of parliament over here that I've worked with, to 7 and 8 figure companies, and working with their entire teams and actually doing this with their entire team as part of it, to be able to get results, to be able to get their team more flow and more productivity and more actually enjoyment in what they're doing. So part of it now is I have the deepest sense of certainty to be able to get people results in it, if they're at the right place, to actually move them through that. So like I don't remember the last time people were just like, oh, I don't know. There's always going to be people that are kind of doubters as part of that, and super skeptical. And that's also part of specific epigenetic expressions that show up. And as soon as I start to see that, I understand how their brain functions a little bit differently, because to be more skeptical about something means they have certain hormonal profiles in their brain, and you can facilitate them in a completely different way. And you can actually just move them to specific outcomes, because what they're really looking for is something beyond what their current paradigm actually is in a lot of instances, and then normally a lot more future focused as well. So as soon as we understand that, we can move things forward as part of that. And like the proof is in the results. The proof is in the pudding as part of the results that we get from working with hundreds of 7 and 6 to 8 figure business owners is who we specifically work with, to be able to make sure that they can get the most flow and fulfillment in their life, to be able to actually create that.
Now, I get that a lot of people, might be doubters and stuff like that. And I found that trying to convince people that they should be a part of something when they're not bought in tends to not really work in your advantage. But it's to make them aware. It's to give them a little insight that they can discover on their own. And then when they're ready to jump in wholeheartedly, they're going to put their efforts behind it. You also made a mention of like you have a different hormonal profile based on like, who we are and the questions we ask. Does that mean we should be like adjusting like our diets, our supplements, our hormone profiles that we based on that, like each individual thing to help us get into more flow? And how does that become an integral part of your coaching? I mean, when we first started chatting, I was like, okay, you're doing like mindset, but it's also like, okay, sleep, it's physical fitness, it's psychology, it's hormonal balance, food intake. So it's kind of like a whole thing. Like how do you balance that and determine like what somebody should be, adding in or taking out of their diet to be more likely to be in flow state?
Yeah. Yeah, another great question. And as part of that, I was previously a lecturer for Sports Nutrition Australia over here and on the board for Sports Nutrition Australia. And when I actually started to learn about epigenetic expressions, I actually found out that no person has food as their number one priority, not one single person. So when we look at that, we start to look at, okay, cool, what's the higher priorities are beyond that? Because if I'm focusing a lot of my time, energy, and effort on the food that people are putting in, what's more important for that? For some people, it's the environment. For some people, it's their mind, all of these different components. And what that really allows us to do is as soon as we understand someone's predominant either hormone or neurotransmitter, because it's different for different people, whatever their predominant one is, we call it the big domino. And as soon as we knock over the big domino, all of the other ones start to fall over because we have this cascade of events. You start eating better when you knock over this first domino, whether it's, for me, it's exercise. For my partner, it's mindset. If she can have the mindset, then everything starts to fall into place. And normally what happens is we instantly just focus on all of the different things and get pulled in all these different directions of food, training, environment, all of these different things. And as soon as we understand our epigenetic expression, we can understand, okay, cool, this is the first thing that I need to focus on that's going to get me the greatest results more than anything else. So if I only do one thing, this is going to be what it is, and I'm going to get the greatest results from that, and everything else starts to get knocked over from that because we understand that predominance of that hormone. And for me, that hormone is ACTH, which is responsible for adrenaline and testosterone or challenge. So exercise becomes the expression of that, because if it builds up in my body, then it creates suppression and then therefore depression over a period of time, which was what actually happened when I had that experience in the car. So as soon as I understand that, I can ensure that I don't get to that place. I can understand that I can express my body through my biology to be able to create what I'm here to create. And by doing that, I become the permission piece for other people to do the same as part of it. And that also links into the people that are not necessarily aligned with doing these things. Part of when I share my story, people are either going to be aligned with it and go, okay, cool, I'm on board for your mission that you're creating of creating the superhuman society, or it's just like, and that's the perfect expression of it, that I can go, okay, cool, this is my call to arms of creating the superhuman society. Are you in? Awesome, let's move forward. If not, that's okay too. You can go, like, that's your journey, that's perfect. And
Mm-hmm.
part of what we look at with that is just starting to be able to actually communicate that to people of exactly where we're at as part of it.
Yeah. So Robert asked a question I wanted to get you to clarify on. Are we talking about psychology treatment or business? Sort of losing the process.
So when we're looking at individuals, we're looking at like basically trying to put it into a box is we're looking at creating flow in every person's life. Now that can flow into business. This is creating personal flow because it's a completely different component to it. Because when we think about traditional psychological treatments, it's based on, okay, cool, we've got this problem. Let's actually go and work through that. Let's talk about that. And that has some benefit for some epigenetic expressions. And for other people, it actually perpetuates the same problem. If they're thinking about things more because they have a high functioning brain, which is typically in a beta brainwave range, and that actually perpetuates the problems. So part of it is just starting to really create this truly personalized approach. And when we look at that, that's typically the people that we work with are leaders and coaches as part of that, because that's the tipping point of getting this to be able to spread out to the masses. We're not going to go to every individual person to be able to do that at this stage. It's really starting to how we can actually find coaches and leaders that are willing to actually uh, create an environment conducive with flow for them to be able to do that. So when we return to, is it psychological treatment or business, it's really about optimizing the individual's performance in this context so they can create flow in whatever area of their life that they choose to do that, whether that's in business, whether that's in their personal life, any area of that. It's the optimization of the individual first so that we can then have that expand out into the other areas of their life.
Yeah. I think you're right. It's everybody's unique approach to it. And it just so happens you're working with business leaders and coaches, it becomes business related. But if you are, in sports performance, this would be one thing. If you are like playing a piano or an instrument, anything that requires your brain to be very, very focused on a task, maybe you're a coder, right? You could be like an amazing coder, a surgeon, that I think this could apply to any aspect that you need a high level of performance. So with that, I want to ask you, what does it mean to you to be all in on an idea or an outcome?
To be all in on an idea or an outcome is really just to be fully committed to it and actually doing whatever it takes to be able to allow that to come to fruition. Now, most people do what's comfortable rather than what they're committed to. Most people live in this place where it's like, okay, this is comfortable. I'm going to do this until a point, rather than actually going, okay, well, if I'm all in that I'm committed to this result, I'm going to do whatever it takes to be able to create that. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be able to create this superhuman society, to be able to work with as many people as possible, to be able to create that expansion out into the world so that we can also start to see the level of fulfillment and flow in the world start to raise up. And when we look at that that frame of reference of it's really about what we're committed to. When it all comes down to all in, being all in, it's what are you committed to being all in on? Because in a lot of instances, sadly, so many people are all in on their excuses, on their reasons why they can't do those things. Every single person is all in on something. It's really determining, is that the thing that you're actually looking at creating in the world? Is that the thing that's actually making you alive? And
Hmm.
when we can focus on being all in on what we're committed to and what we want to create as this future state that we're stepping into, well, that creates this deeper sense of aliveness for us. And that's how we do that, by measuring our level of commitment to that.
I love that answer. Like you're either all in on something or you're all in on something else, and that might not be what you want to be all in on. So, you talked a bit about that you work with business leaders and coaches, but tell us in a little bit more detail of exactly who is that, what puts you in flow? Where are you in flow with your ideal customers? They're in flow, you're in flow. It just feels like it's just meant to be a natural. Is your target audience there?
Yeah, so the people that we work with predominantly are coaches and leaders. So coaches, because they're just obsessed with growing and learning, and they're already in the space of like, well, I'm committed to growth. And because part of our expansion to be able to expand this out into the world is creating more coaches that are superhuman leadership coaches, as like the sign says, that's what we're committed to creating, because they're going to be the people that are actually going to go out and take this to hundreds of other people themselves. So when we look at that, we work with a lot of coaches, but then we also work with people in leaders in 7 and 8 figure companies to work with their teams specifically, because then we can work with these people to actually improve and optimize every part of their team as part of it. So there's really two kinds of people that we work with in different parts of the business to be able to ultimately get that results. And part of that is also how my brain functions based on my epigenetic expression. Most people like, you've got to narrow it right down to one niche, and at the same time my brain makes all of the connections between things, and that becomes part of my greatest strength. That's why it's like there's two different groups of people that we work with, and we normally just focus on a lot of the coaches and leaders to be able to serve them as best as possible so that they can actually start to create more flow and fulfillment in their life, and that's what we're committed to. So
Awesome. And how do you work with your clients typically?
well, we have different ways that we work with people depending on where they're at in their journey. So we have like a 12-week becoming superhuman program to be able to create personal flow. We have the superhuman leadership certification for them to be able to create flow for other people. And then we have the consulting that we do for 7 and 8 figure companies, where we're working specifically teams to be able to create flow in their team. So depending on where people are at, we work with people in those three different ways.
Awesome, awesome, awesome stuff. So, where can people go if they found this compelling and interesting and they want to figure out how to get into flow with you? Where can they go to find you?
Best place to go is the LLC Facebook group, which is Legendary Leaders and Coaches. And that's where we put the majority of our content to be able to learn more about this and start to just find out more about all of the different epigenetic expressions and how that relates to you, and actually develop as a leader, as a coach, to be able to actually increase your skills, knowledge, and actually be on the journey with other people that are doing the same thing.
Awesome stuff. So those are listed in the show notes. I encourage you to reach out to Cody, connect with him, say hello, and if you do have a conversation, be sure to tell him you heard about him on the All In podcast with Nate Peo. So thank you so much for your time, Cody. Had a great conversation. This is like a really, really compelling subject, and it's one that I've wanted to dive in a little bit deeper on. I heard a Ed Milet podcast where he was talking about flow, and it's a very fascinating topic. And if you've ever experienced it, you know what that feeling is like. And to realize that you could replicate it is pretty amazing. So I love what you're up to, love what you're doing, and I encourage anybody to reach out and learn more about what you're up to. So thank you so much for coming on the show here.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for taking the time to be able to put this together. Like, I've run many podcasts over the years, and I know the time, energy, and effort that it takes to be able to put it together, all of the back end stuff. So honor and appreciate you for creating this community, sharing your platform, and bringing it to the world. So thank you.
Thank you, man.